Welcome back to the CDL podcast. Today we are doing Rostermania.
We're switching it up. Brock's doing the intro. I know you're all caught off guard.
Got him.
We're doing Rostermania stuff. There honestly isn't that much new stuff from last week. A couple more people announced their free agents. A couple, I guess, confirmed rosters. With the Vegas Legion sale, some new rumored orgs coming into the league. So, like Brock said, welcome back. If you enjoy this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the audio platforms, drop a follow, drop a 5-star review. Probably going to be a shorter episode today. We may have at least one or two guests next week. We're going to do the NFL preview next week. It may just be Brock and I. We're trying to see if we can potentially get some other people on for that, but just going to be like a fun episode where if there's any big time COD news, we'll talk COD news right away, and then it's just going to be like a full episode where we just do it for fun. Usually it's like last year, it wasn't a super viewed video, but it's such a dead time. It's like, I don't know. We both enjoy the NFL. It's something fun to do and talk about, just an NFL season's preview. And honestly, I never even went back and watched to see how good we did. I honestly want to say I probably got the Super Bowl right, because I think I probably picked the Chiefs, but I have no idea. It'll be interesting though. We'll probably end up doing that next week. So next week, honestly, will be like a little bit of CDL talk, but it'll be like our once a year fun NFL episode where we just talk football. So excited for that next week. But this week going to be a shorter, just roster mania episode. Before we do that though, I guess the one non-roster mania thing, the Black Ops 6 multiplayer reveal trailer was today, Brock.
I did not get to watch that.
It's like the typical, like, you don't really get much from it. It's like all just like cinematic stuff. Like they like showed Gunsmith and I wanted to throw up again. I'm like, God, just give me back the classic. The classic. You saw like the Omni movement of like, you saw somebody like dolphin diving sideways and shooting pistols at the same time.
Like, excited for that.
Yeah, some like crazy movement stuff. It's like, it's a typical trailer. It's like people get like hyped and they try to overanalyze it. It's like you really can't see much. You can maybe like see some weapons because of like, in the thing you can tell, like if you see like an M16, we all from playing COD kind of know.
Yeah.
What that gun looks like. You can tell some weapons, but you really can't tell much. It's not like you see actual gameplay. That'll be this weekend, I believe, right? The beta starts. So
I believe so, yes.
That'll be, that's where you'll actually get like the knowledge in the game. You'll get to feel what it plays like. You'll get to see what it plays like. That's when you actually get your knowledge on what the game really is, when you can actually sit down and play it or watch people play it. It's not really from that cinematic trailer. So it was cool. I like to see it. The Omni movement looks crazy. You're going to see some crazy shots of ego chows from that. But not too much you can tell from it. I'm just more excited to see people play that. Unfortunately, I'm not really going to be able to play this weekend. I have a bachelor party that I will be gone all weekend for. So I'm not going to be able to play really much, but I will definitely be tuning in to see what it's all looking like.
Yep, I'm in the same boat as you. I will not be able to play.
Because actually, when does the beta start? If it starts Thursday night, I can't remember.
If it's Thursday, at whatever,
I'll be able to play a little bit.
Yeah.
Black Ops 6 open beta. Oh, the open beta is the.
I thought it was the 30th. No,
it says the 30th, so Friday. Yeah. 10 a.m. Pacific time. So I guess technically, if you're able to play at like noon on Friday, that's our time, noon Central.
Yeah.
Is when it would start. So maybe I have a potential to play a little bit then or something. But, for the most part, not going to be able to play. I'll be pretty much gone for most of the weekend. But it's the 30th to the 4th. I guess it is open. That's kind of nice. They open it until Wednesday.
Okay. Well, that's pretty nice.
That's actually pretty nice. And then it opens again. Like, that's the early access where if you've like pre-ordered it, only people that have purchased the game, I believe, can play. And then the 6th through the 9th. That next weekend after that, the NFL opening weekend, I also won't be able to play because I'll be at the Colts game. So I'm really gonna have to get some time played in on like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, because both in the beta weekends, I'm at a bachelor party and then at the Colts game. So it's gonna be rough there in terms of playing it, but super excited. It's gonna be a fun game. I'm very, very, very excited for it. Probably the most excited I've been for a COD. I would say since at least Cold War, probably.
Yeah, I'll say for me Vanguard, but we all know how I view Vanguard.
That's true. I'm more talking like the initial like pre-game hype, because honestly for me, like every time a new COD is coming out, I'm obviously excited. It's just like when it's a Treyarch or when it's an Infinity Ward or a Sledgehammer game, like I get excited, but it's not the level of excitement you get when you know a Treyarch game's coming out. Because like with Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer, you have hopes, but I mean, your hopes are never usually that high. You're kind of like cautiously optimistic. With Treyarch, I just like I'm ready to get hurt again. I'm back in. I'm ready to just pray this game's going to be amazing, and then you just see what happens. With them, I have faith though.
Yep, Treyarch, like it's gonna hit.
Yeah, I feel like their floor. If we're going to talk about floor and ceiling of a player that announced he's coming back, but like I feel like Treyarch's floor is like a lot of the other studios' ceiling at this point. Like Treyarch's game is going to be like average at best, or average at the worst, I should say.
Yeah, they always deliver.
Yeah, it's always at least a decent game. I mean, like Cold War, you could argue overall is like the worst game they've released in quite some time, and it was an excellent game. But anyways, Brock, some org and roster news now. Jump into that. That'll be pretty much the bulk of the episode. This Vegas Legion thing's a little weird, huh? So
it is.
Vegas Legion sold their spot, which I would say is probably a net positive for the league because they are an org that didn't create any content, didn't care about putting together a team, really didn't ever like try. I will say they've at least made roster moves the past few years, so they at least like tried a little bit more in that aspect, whereas like in the past sometimes their team would just be horrible and they would even make roster moves because they didn't want to spend money. So at least they made some roster moves the past couple of years, but they the Falcons organization, the Saudi Arabian organization, bought the spot, and they inserted their team from the Esports World Cup, who I believe was playing in EU Challengers. Didn't have great results there. I think I saw they won maybe one cup or something, but overall didn't have the best results. But they inserted their roster from EWC, which is 4 players, I believe, from Saudi Arabia. And it's interesting because they definitely looked like they showed some talent at the World Cup. But like, I don't know. Do you think it's a little bit unfair to other EU challengers, NA challengers, Latin American challengers, all these players who have been like grinding and putting good placements forth? They're like former pros who maybe were dropped down to challengers but really performed. You think it's unfair for these 4 players to just be handed the spot from their org despite maybe not earning it? I don't know.
It's kind of, I mean, I guess in a way, like for like those players who have been grinding for years and years. I believe they said this team has been playing for the last 2 years, Taylor and Challengers.
Yeah, it's just like they have never had like many good placements at all. So it's like if this was a EU Challengers team, they obviously would have just been straight up picked up with their place, or like I guess they were technically competing in EU. Let's say this was an NA Challengers team that was constantly having the placements and stuff they were having, and like put up the performance they did at the World Cup. They won a couple maps, but they overall just got double bounced out of the tournament. There's no way this team, if they were like an NA Challengers team, would have gotten picked up as a full squad. Yeah, I mean, we're not dumb. We know the reason. I mean, they're obviously under contract with the Falcons org. They're the Saudi Arabian team. So they wanted to insert them in. Now we did hear they are going to have, or they plan to have an NA Challengers roster. So I don't know if they're maybe going to switch in those players potentially. Like if they're going to have an NA Challengers roster, maybe switch those players in like a 1-for-1, or if they're maybe going to swap the whole roster. I guess because I also don't know enough about these players to know like what is their English ability. Like, are they fluent English speakers? Do they not speak any English? Because obviously that would play a factor if there is an American player or just an NA player in general coming up to the team. Obviously, they have to be able to speak the same language because that's going to be pretty tough if you don't speak the same language as your teammates to communicate. Yeah, it's not going to have too much success.
No, but I mean, it is kind of cool for them to,
it's very cool, yeah.
Get the spot, and we'll see how they do and see how they can, during the season, how they progress, I should say, as a team.
I mean, mechanically, definitely with a lot of the players, like at the World Cup, we saw the mechanical skill. There definitely was a lot there. Like they were snapping, like they seemed to be playing pretty well. It was just like a lot of times in Hardpoint, like we talked about, like their setups, it was like they would get insta broken. They didn't have very good setups, and like honestly, that could be due to, I mean, a lot of the practice they get probably isn't nearly as good as like the practice you'd get over here, obviously being in the pro league. So it'll be interesting to see with, the better practice and playing the better teams consistently if they're able to pick things up. I will say the one advantage this Falcons team does seem to have that could really help them shake up the CDL in comparison to the old Vegas team who didn't like to spend any money. I believe this team will come in and probably be the richest team.
Yeah.
Is that Saudi Arabia money? They got the crazy money. They just won $7 million from the World Cup, and I know this org, from what I've heard in other esports, they like paid crazy buyouts in CS. Like this org will just throw around money. They have a lot, so like maybe not this year since they're bringing this roster, but let's say that this experiment doesn't work. They don't want to keep this roster, and like there are some good players that are free agents. This org does have a chance to potentially turn the league upside down because, I mean, with the amount of money they have, if they're truly willing to pay so much and they're willing to just pay way over what other orgs are paying, like unless you have the pull of like an optic where those players are probably not going to want to leave, like I don't know, like do the players on FaZe, if they all become free agents and want to keep teaming together and the Falcons organization offers them double what FaZe, like are they going to be loyal to FaZe or are they going to be like, hey, that's double the money? I mean, it'd be hard not to say yes. So it's going to be interesting, like to see what happens because like they're going to have money to throw around when these players become free agents. Optic's probably the only org you would maybe take less money to go to just because like, you know, the content side of it, maybe setting yourself up for a career after with the content. But other than that, like I don't know if any org has enough pull to be like, hey, I'm going to pay you way more money. And I mean, Falcons might even have more pull over Optic to some players because if you're a player that doesn't care about content, you're obviously going to choose Falcons over Optic if they're offering you more money.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that's very interesting.
If I'm a challenger player, I'm hitting up the organization to see if I can get a spot in challengers.
Yeah, I was kind of curious of that too. Like, if you're a challengers player, it's the long play. It's like, hey, can I get in your challengers team in case I get promoted up to the roster? I could get like a huge pay increase. Also, like, I don't know. I guess I don't know how that's going to work. Like, if they contract their challengers team, are they going to pay them like a ton, like the most the challenger roster has ever made? I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch. I'm interested to see what that team does moving forward because with the amount of money they have, they certainly could be a major player. I mean, right now, obviously, they're not a huge player in free agency because of the fact that they do, you know, have the roster they're carrying over. But if they decide to move on from that roster or just get any open spots in general, they could be a major player that could be paying a lot of money and poaching players and shaking up the league a little bit.
Yeah. So excited to see where they go from here.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Falcons World Cup, Esports World Cup announced it's returning for 2025. Not too much of a surprise there. I guess we kind of figured that. Hopefully COD will be returning to it. Hopefully Black Ops 6 will be returning. Ideally, like we said, we'd like to see the timing of it switch potentially, but I'm just glad that it's back, and I'm really hoping COD's back in it because I will always take the extra event, especially one of that magnitude. Like, there were some issues with it and stuff, sure, but it was extremely fun to watch another $1.8 million tournament, a lot on the line. Like, still fun to watch out. So we're never going to complain about extra events of that magnitude. And it is kind of a fun extra like accolade, like we said last week, kind of a fun extra accolade to throw on there. Like, could somebody become the first 2-time World Cup champion? And like, all that's kind of fun to think about, a fun little addition to the CDL or just the Call of Duty season in general.
Yeah. And who doesn't love more COD being played for an extra month?
Yeah, exactly. Brock, another piece of news. Some teams are interested in buying some spots. It sounds like Carolina, Royal Ravens, and LAG looking to get out. Carolina, not crazy shocked. LAG, obviously not shocked at all. They've been wanting out for a couple years now. Sounds like Team Liquid, Space Station, Fnatic, and Gen G are among teams hoping to replace them. I know Rise Nation for a long time was interested. I don't even know if they're still an organization, so maybe they're out there. But some big name teams. I mean, Team Liquid is a huge team outside of Call of Duty. I think they're pretty big in League of Legends. Space Station, obviously, in Halo is like really where I know them from. I think they are an org with a pretty good amount of money, though. I want to say Space Station has a lot of money, but I'm not sure. Fnatic, obviously, another big organization. They were in COD in the past. I do remember them in like IW. I think they have like a French team. I feel like Tommy was on their team for a while. I think like Tommy and Scraps. And
I think you're right.
I think Tommy, Scraps, Wuskin, and Sunny B were on their team in IW.
I think you're right.
Crazy Tommy, Clutch, and S&D. I think that was a team in IW. But I know regardless of if that was the roster, I know Fnatic's been in COD before. Liquid was for a little bit. Weren't they in a little bit in the Black Ops 3 Pro League? They were for like a little, like a stage or something. I could be wrong. I could be thinking that wrong. I get like them and H2K and all those teams kind of mixed up in my head.
I can't remember, honestly.
Oh, maybe they were. I could be wrong. Like I said, Cloud9, H2K, all those teams from that era, LG, they all kind of have that same color logo. I get them all mixed up in my head from that Black Ops 3 Pro League. And then Gen G, obviously another team we've seen in COD and Black Ops 4 with that Envoy, Nagafen. They were a really good team in Black Ops 4. They were like consistently in the top 4,
Mm-hmm.
even
Yeah,
with their champs collapse.
yeah, that was a pretty good team.
And they made some grand finals.
That was like,
They
honestly, I was gonna say that's a pretty good team for the players that we didn't really know about at the time.
yeah, Envoy was like kind of a nobody from that Midnight team at the
Mm-hmm.
time. Havoc was like known. Mox was known, but he had never really been on a good team. Nagafen, same thing. He was known and had been on some good teams, but he was kind of on the downward
Yeah,
for his career going into that game. And then who's the other player I'm missing?
Major Maniac.
Yeah, Major Maniac was a player who really hadn't been on much of a team either. So really, like, it was like Envoy, Major Maniac never really been on a good team or pretty unknown. Same with Mox. And Nagafen and Havoc were like the two known players who both like weren't really on a great trajectory for their career. That was an awesome team to watch. And then unfortunately, they bottomed out and didn't make it out of bracket play at champs.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately,
But some major organizations, two of them looking to replace the two orgs. Brock, that leaves two of them out. I say we find two extra organizations. Let's expand it to 16 teams. There's no buy-in, no reason not to expand to 16 teams.
why not? Let's do it.
We know it's not going to happen, but if it ever were to happen, it'd be an off season like this where you don't have a buy-in fee anymore, so it's a lot less barrier for entry and easier for teams to get in. They should be expanding to 16 teams, but we know they won't do that properly and they'll screw it up.
Yeah, unfortunately, but hopefully in the next couple of years they will, if not this year.
Agreed. But I have zero hope for it to happen. I'll just be extremely pleasantly surprised and happy if it does, but not expecting it to happen at all.
Mhm.
Brock, sad news, I guess. Not really actually sad news. I shouldn't preface it like that, but Abuza is apparently not a free agent this year. The internal tracker was wrong, so he is locked into Seattle. And to this point, unless I missed something, we haven't seen any announcements from the Seattle org. So potentially they're running it back with the same team. Apparently,
Yeah.
Abuza is not a free agent. Apparently that internal tracker was wrong, and Abuza is actually not free agent. He is under contract for Seattle Surge. So if they have any brains, they will, unless they just want to sell him off for money, they definitely should be building a team around Abuza. Honestly, they should be going all in because Seattle Surge keep doing it. I will say, for how bad they were for the first few years, you do have to give them credit. Like, they were able to lock down Civ and Pred for their first stints in the CDL and get those guys on a starting roster, and that's what kept Seattle relevant. I mean, they won an event in Vanguard. They were very good at times in MW2, potentially making like finals runs at times. And then this year they looked really horrible to start, but they were able to find guys like Abuza and 04 and lock them up for their first years when they were like, really good players. 04 was solid, but Abuza was like, looked like an MVP caliber player at the end of the year with how he was shooting. So like, credit to Seattle. They've been able to lock down some pretty good young players and have had pretty good eye for talent for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just reminiscing, like, on if Pred and Sib did stay and Abuza like was next up at the time, and they had Gwyn on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, they did have Gwyn on the bench last year. If they would have, we're going to talk about him in a little bit, Mac, but he wasn't the greatest player, not this past season, but the season before at MW. He was MW2. He was struggling a little bit. It wasn't his best year. He's still a very good player. It wasn't his best year. So like, Gwyn was able to win Challenger champs. Imagine if they called up Gwyn on that roster. Like you said, Abuza was 1 year earlier. If they called up Abuza, Gwyn, Pred, Sib, communication might be horrible on that team, but man, they'd be able to shoot.
Yeah, definitely shoot. That's for sure.
But yeah, Abuza apparently not a free agent. So Seattle in a position to, Seattle's definitely in a position along with Thieves. If those two rosters are kind of sticking or just slightly retooling, those are two teams that are definitely in a position to strike and potentially, sneak their way into a consistent top 5, top 6 team, because we figure Optic and FaZe are going to be right there back as top 2, top 3 teams. You figure New York and Ultra probably going to be right back in there in the top 4, just kind of depending on how they retool. If they do pick up somebody for Insight, will it work? Is New York going to make a change? If they don't, we expect them to still be in the top 4. If they do, with the fact that they have Hydra and Sib, they probably still remain in the top 4. But the Seattle team, if they just retool around, like the 04 and Abuza duo, maybe even huke, and then LAT if they stick, or retool around like Ghosty and Joe, could definitely have to me, the easiest path to remaining, in the top 6.
Yep. Like the Thieves and Seattle Surge just scream like a Nero to one of these teams if they do make a change.
Yeah, I don't know if LAT is going to though. Like I feel like they maybe don't want to spend as much money. I feel like maybe Ghosty staying. He like asked to keep the roster the same, and that's why he'd stay or something. And yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know if Nero. I don't know if Seattle would want to spend the cash to get Nero when they have Huke in 04 because like I'm assuming if they dropped one, obviously it'd be Huke. They probably want to keep 04, the younger, more untapped potential player. But Huke kind of does play a similar style as Nero.
Yeah.
Just like get in your face, ultra aggression. I think I'd rather have Nero at this point, but like I don't know if Seattle will be willing to shell out the cash and like all that to, make the roster change. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But it's not a bad shout at all.
Yeah. We need some more roster moves happening. I need to see these.
I know. I want to see what's actually going on with these rosters. Instead, we're just seeing people announce that they're free agents, but really no moves being made. Like we've seen like a couple that we'll talk about in a second here, but our boy Brock, speaking of aggressive SMGs, one of our favorite players, Vivid, announced that he is a free agent looking, to come back for Black Ops 6 and proves people wrong. So shout out to Reese Vivid. I don't know. We always blindly support him, whatever team he's on. And it's not even like a blind support because it's just like, he sucks, but we support him. Reese Vivid's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the lack of SMG talent in the league right now. Like there are some obviously insane SMGs, the ones that you all know, but the mid-tier teams, like the reason they really struggle, a lot of times it isn't the ARs. There are plenty of ARs that like the job, let's be honest, the job for an AR is easier. Like you don't have to be as skilled at a lot of times to be an AR. Like the job in general is easier. Like a good sub is harder to come by, and Vivid is a really good sub. It's hard to find subs that can put up the numbers Vivid can while being as aggressive as he is.
Mm-hmm.
So one of you teams pick up Vivid.
Very aggressive. And like I said, when it does become a 3 AR map, he can pull the AR out as well.
He can pull an AR out, one of the most accurate shooters in the league, one of the fastest paced players, still puts up good numbers, pretty good S&D player. He's good at first bloods in S&D. He's a very good player. We're always going to gas up our boy Reese Vivid, Wisconsin native, only one I know of still. We're always gassing up our boy Reese Vivid. And now Brock, I wouldn't hate pairing him. Screw it. They might be cheap. People aren't maybe going to be looking at him as much. Another guy who announced he's coming back, Mac. Will he get in a team? I'm not sure, but I feel like I just talked about, he didn't have the best year in MW2. Maybe some stuff was going on. He was playing, like I heard Octane talking about it on the flank. Mac wasn't one of the toughest roles there is on a Lamar team when you have two stars in Sib and Pred. I mean, like Lamar was like, I'll soak the hills. I'll do all that. I'll like just sit in the back, get spawns, while Sib and Pred just have the ultimate green light to just go get kills. And Mac was just kind of left to gap fill and do all the rest of the stuff. It was a tough role.
Yeah.
It's going to make your numbers look bad because you're letting Sib and Pred just go do everything in the kills department. So it's going to make Mac's numbers look bad. If you remember Mac in MW19, you remember him in Vanguard. He's an extremely good player. And the other thing I always remember about Mac, he's a big game player.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember that rivalry, that Seattle versus FaZe rivalry, where Seattle always seemed to be worse, but they would always play FaZe so tough. Mac was putting up numbers. I remember that one time when he was sick on that bow cage, he like had to throw up mid-map. He dropped like 40-something on them on FaZe.
Oh, yeah.
He was going crazy. I mean, Mac is an incredible player.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, he'll be cheap this year, and I'd say he's pretty clutch.
Yeah, some team pick up that Mac and Vivid duo. Let Vivid be your super aggressive, more entry SMG. Let Mac kind of clean up the kill department. They're going to be a cheap SMG duo, and they actually could end up being a really solid duo. And I don't know if either of them will make the league right away, but those two, if not, should form a Challengers team, get on the Falcons Challenger team. But yeah, do you think Mac will get on a team right away? I don't think he will, but I think it'll be a mistake. I think he'll go in Challengers, start picking people apart. Somebody will pick him up, and they'll be like, damn, we should have picked him up right away.
My mind says no, just because he didn't play at all this year.
Yeah, like we'll talk about it in a little bit, but like that Carolina team is just sitting there with only Gwyn. That Minnesota team is sitting there with only one sub and Lins. Those two teams should be calling and getting Mac, Vivid, Nero on the phone like immediately. Those two teams, even Tej, I guess not for Carolina because they dropped Tej, but Like, you need to pair Vivid with Linz because you never should have dropped him, or Mac or Nero. Same with Carolina. You got to be calling Nero, get him on the phone, let him, be an aggressive entry. Even Vivid, get him on the phone to pair him with Gwyn.
Mm-hmm.
I like Mac as a player. I hope he's able to get back on a team. I don't know if he'll be on a team right away, but I expect Mac to be in the CDL at some point next year, as well as Vivid.
Yep, I'm in the same boat as you. How I feel those players.
Brock, now this is an interesting one. Actually, let's do these two quick because they'll be really quick. Rencor joined Miami, a name we've heard a lot in the Spanish Challenger scene, but just don't know much about him. But apparently he's joining the team for Vickle. He's probably going to play an SMG role. Don't know much about him, but a guy we kind of figured might make the team because he's been a top name we've always heard of as a Spanish Challenger player. So apparently he's joining the team for Vickle. We'll see if they make any other moves, but it's hard to speak on that one too much because I just don't know too much about him besides I've heard his name a lot.
Yep.
And then Fellow, a restricted free agent as well. Brock, the big one I want to talk about, illey announced he's a free agent for this year.
Again.
The thing is, like, it's not a talent question. If
Yep.
you're just speaking off pure talent, illey 100% deserves to be in the league, deserves to be on a good team. The problem is, like, who's going to pick him up, Brock? He hasn't played a full season since Cold War. You know how many games we've had since then? This will be the fourth game since Cold War. I mean, we had Vanguard, MW2, and MW3. He was able to play partially, but he hasn't been able to finish a season for numerous reasons. It was, the thumb in Vanguard. He was dropped in MW2, and then, whatever happened last season with the whole controversy.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been able to play a full season since Cold War.
Yeah. Well, when he's played, he's done good, but when he usually plays about like half a month, and then he's out of there. Injury or personal stuff, outside the game stuff.
Yeah. America was still in a lockdown the last time this dude played a full season.
It was. You know what team could get him?
Who's that?
Toronto. Because he's from Toronto as well.
I thought about that. I was like, he's from Toronto. I would love him as a main AR on this team or whatever, as an AR duo with Scrap. But you just can't. You can't if you're Toronto, because this potentially could be your last year with Scrap. You can't take a risk like that with illey unless you're able to like lock up, unless you're like able to lock up like Slasher or like another AR if they don't get a spot, like a Slasher, one of those ARs, like somebody that's really, really good, and you're able to lock him up on the bench and be like, okay, if he's able to play, you're not going to start, but if he, has to leave again this season or something, we'll put you in. But like, obviously I don't see a guy like Slasher ever doing that. It was just an example I was using. Maybe a guy like Beans, because who knows if he's actually going to get picked up. He should be, but maybe a guy like Beans, you throw him on the bench. I still like Beans for this roster. I don't know if Beans and Scrap actually get along, but I like Beans for this roster if Insight's on there. But we're going to get to that in a little bit.
Just
the whole illey thing, like, I have an idea for who I think should pick him up, but I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I was just gonna say it's like so unfortunate how he's like so good, and then like always just something comes up every year.
Yeah, but now if you're an org, you have to look at that and be like, that's a red flag for these orgs. You don't want to be picking up and putting all your resources, because like, he's a very good player and you like build a team around him in some ways, if you're a bottom team especially, but like, you don't want to waste all your resources into it if he's just not going to play the whole year, because then you're setting your team so much behind the 8 ball by, all these other teams have rosters that they may stick with throughout the year, and you're just be forcing yourself to make changes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think illey's so good though. To me, so like if I'm a top team, like if I'm Ultra looking for an AR, illey's name comes up because of the talent, but I shut it down right away because like until we see him play a full season, you can't rely on it. Despite everything being so perfect from Toronto, all that, like if they would pick him up, I do understand it. It's just I wouldn't because of the risk.
Mm-hmm.
I see a team like New York, and I'm like, man, if they did get rid of Skies, if they do want to get rid of him, I feel like illey would be an incredible player there, to help keep improving their S&D and all that. But once again, if I'm New York and I have this good of a roster, who knows how long I'm going to have Hydra and Sib. I cannot take a risk like illey. Obviously, Optic and FaZe aren't making a change. To me, even if I'm like Thieves or Seattle, obviously Seattle's not bringing him back. But if I'm Thieves, I'm not taking a chance on him either. For, I guess, he'd probably replace Nasty. There's no way I'm taking that chance. Nasty was really good down the stretch. Mm-hmm. And Thieves, you feel like you have a pretty good team. To me, the teams that need to take a chance on illey are the bottom teams that just have terrible rosters every year. Your Minnesotas, your Carolinas, whoever replaces LAG. To me, that's the team that's worth taking a risk on illey, because the upside of illey is like he could be a top 15 player.
Mm-hmm.
in the league. So to me, those teams like that, Carolina, Minnesota, LAG, the bad teams that are always terrible regardless, those are the teams you want to see take a shot on him.
Yeah.
Screw it. Give like the whole like we need a second chance team. Give me Mac, Vivid, Illey, and Slasher on a team. Temp for the we need a chance again team. Give me Temp, Illey, Mac, and Vivid. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. I think that team actually might be decent. The comps might be terrible, but I think a Mac, Vivid, SMG duo with Temp and Illey in the backline wouldn't actually be the worst team.
Yeah. It's not bad. We should need Illey available for the whole season.
But yeah, would you agree with me though? Like if I'm even like a top 6 team, I'm not taking a chance on Illey. Especially not dropping like a player that I trust and was good for me last year. But if I'm a bottom team, I'm absolutely taking a chance on him. I'm going to be like, because it's like when you see a player, this isn't different because I'm not saying Illey has this, but it's like in like football when you see a player who has like character issues and like teams don't want to pick him up because he's like an off the field headache. He might get himself in trouble, but like he's so good. Like for example, like a guy like Antonio Brown, like he had so many off the field issues. If you guys know who that is, if you're not an NFL or a football fan, I'm sorry. Basically, Antonio Brown was a terrible person off the field. Had a lot of issues, just a lot of terrible things he was doing off the field. But he was so good that like after he was doing all these terrible things and his current team, the Steelers, dropped him, like people were constantly giving him second chances for a while. Like he was getting all these second chances in all these teams because people were like, he's so good that I'm willing to deal with all the off the field stuff and try to like control him just to get him on the field because he's that good. Yep. Obviously, it's different. Illey's not some like head case, out of the game that's causing all this legal trouble. It's not Illey, but like it's an example to use. Like it's hard to get him on the field, but when you do, he's an incredible player. Basically, what I'm trying to say.
Yep, you played it out, set it out perfectly there.
Yeah. So like for me, if I'm a bottom team, I'm picking him up because the talent, the level that you can get from him is probably a higher ceiling than you're going to get from any other player because nobody wants to play for these teams. So I'm picking him up just for that ceiling and that potential. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I wasn't going to get anybody that good anyways if I'm a bottom team.
Yep. I agree with you.
What were you going to say on it?
I say you said it perfectly if those people get who Antonio Brown is.
Yeah, like that, or are you going to pick up a guy like Fellow who it's not a knock on Fellow, but like he's a guy that like we know what he is. He doesn't really have too high of a ceiling anymore. Like there's no world where Fellow's going to be like a top 10 player in a game, top 15 player in a game. He could be a consistent, good player for a middle of the pack team, but he's never going to be that top player. Where a guy like Illey, he could end up being a top 10, top 15 player in a game and like be a star player that helps propel your team to a higher level. So if I'm a bottom team and I know I'm going to be a bottom team anyways, I'm taking the risk on the guy that could be a star potential, especially if I'm a team like Carolina and I have another guy with star potential like Gwyn. I'm just going all out and picking up like Nero, Gwyn, Illey, and just a main to go with them and just like going for the all potential squad and saying, screw it.
Just figure it out.
Yeah. I saw another interesting post, Brock. I think it was from Jacob Hale. He was basically saying, what would it take? We're done with the Rostermania stuff. Actually, no, we're going to go back. 2 more topics. We're going to go back and talk about like the rosters that are confirmed, maybe who we'd pick up, and then we're going to wrap it up. Sorry, all over the place. So I saw a post, I think it was from Jacob Hale, saying, what would it take for Simp to pass Scump all time? And then our boy PD posted a stat in the comments. It was from like 2 years ago or something, so it's not up to date, but it was basically at the time that they hit 10 losses in the grand finals, their record. So shout out to PD for this. He posted, it was like a Reddit post. At the time they hit 10 losses in the grand finals, Simp's record was 8-10. Scump's was 31-10.
Jesus.
So when they hit 10 losses, Simp only had 8 wins. When Scump hit his 10th loss, he already had 31.
That's insane.
So they had the same amount of losses, but Scump 23 more wins at the time.
Jeez.
That is like, that's absurd. It's triple the wins he even had overall, was just the difference in their wins.
That's actually insane stat.
Yeah. And obviously, like when we're talking about greatest of all time or like best SMG of all time, Simp or Scump, I don't think there's a debate currently. It's one of those two, obviously.
Yep.
And I'm still saying it's no doubt Scump in my mind. And the big factor in that is, the finals record as well as just overall wins. I mean, we're obviously not talking overall impact because Scump will probably be never past an overall impact on the game. We're just talking purely in game. Simp to me is the one guy that can pass him in SMG category. is like the one guy right now that's definitely the next in line to potentially pass him. I'm just wondering what I guess does he have to do to pass him? For me, it's for sure another ring. I think if he gets to 3, then it's like, okay, it's a 3-1 debate. It's like hard to argue there. Maybe like 20 plus wins. Like if he's at like 3 rings, 20 wins, I could see it. But also he's got to go on a stretch where he's going to have to win like 7 finals in a row he makes. Like he needs to improve that finals win-loss record. Like with Scump having such like a 3-1 like insane ratio of wins, you just can't have Simp having a negative finals record.
Yeah. He's going to need like win like 2 finals for the next 3 years and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Without losing.
Yeah, I was going to say without losing. I feel like what gets it to like a really heavy debate is that 3rd ring, because even despite whatever the record is, whatever the total wins, he already has a lot of wins for basically only playing in the CDL era. But like whatever that win total is that he's at, once he gets to that 3 rings, if he does, it's going to be like, okay, it's the 3-1. Like the finals record really affects him, and like the total wins does, affect him despite, not having as much events in the CDL. But like if it gets to that 3-1 ring ratio, it starts to be like, okay, it's a little tough to overcome it now, because 3-1 in rings is a good advantage for Simp.
Yeah.
And speaking of Scump, Brock, he won Esports Personality of the Year.
Go Scumper Jumper.
Which is honestly kind of crazy because he won it over Kai and Speed, and I believe Jinxie was in that category. So like, it's such a weird name for a category though, because it's the Esports Worlds and it's the Esports Personality of the Year, but then like people like Kai and Speed are in it. So like, it's kind of just a weird name, like calling it the Esports Personality of the Year. It doesn't seem like those guys should be in it, because I mean they really aren't associated with esports. I feel like it should just be called like Streamer of the Year. Yeah, because like calling it Esports Personality of the Year and then having like Speed and Kai, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, because like obviously if it's Streamer of the Year, they definitely deserve to be in. That's what this award was. I honestly am very surprised that Scump won it. Like we know Scump, he's the biggest personality in Call of Duty. He's huge, but like Kai and Speed are another level right now. They're like Jinxie as well. I forget who else was up. I think those 3 were up for it. But like I'm sure Sketch was probably up for it too. He was like blowing up this year. Yeah, Kai, man, it's kind of shocking. I know. I'm pretty sure, unless I was. What were you gonna say? I said it's kind of shocking, but it's good for Scump in Call of Duty. And it is a voting system too, I believe. So like, shout out to the Call of Duty fans for voting heavy for Scump, because I'm sure that is one thing. Is I think they do a lot of votes through Twitter and stuff, and like voting through there. And I will say, Call of Duty community on Twitter is extremely strong. But still, I can't believe that like Kai or Speed did one, with how much they're blowing up. Like they're the biggest streamers on planet Earth right now. I'm pretty surprised they actually didn't win, because I believe they were in that category. But shout out to Scump. We'll always support our people from Call of Duty. So obviously Scump very deserving as well. He was crushing it this year with the watch parties and everything. Definitely not saying Scump did deserve it, but I was just surprised, because I think he even said when I was listening to like the Optic podcast, he was like on there, he's like, oh, I'm in the category with Kai and Speed. Like I would tell you to vote for me, but it's not going to matter or something. And he ends up winning. I think Hecz was in there too, and he's like, just don't vote for me. I know I'm not winning. And now look at him. Yeah, because I don't know. It's cool though. Our last thing, Brock. Our last thing, I wanted to look at the rosters, like basically what we kind of have confirmed for some rosters now, and like maybe just quickly say, like, after you've seen some of the more players get dropped, what would you target if you were this team? So kind of going through phase, sticking the same, optics sticking the same. We're gonna say Thieves is gonna stick the same, and for now, just for the sake of it, we're gonna say Seattle sticking. We're gonna say New York sticking, because it's hard to like drop those players. It gets so messy. Obviously, the Vegas team is sticking. It sounds like Boston's sticking. It sounds like they're basically out of money, and they're just gonna stick with that roster at Esports World Cup unless we hear something different. The Cammy, Awakening, Purge, Snoopy. Unless I missed something, they potentially could be sticking. So that leaves us with Insight potentially moving off Ultra. Who would they replace? We're going to say, for the sake of this segment, Insight is off Ultra. Guaranteed they're taking him off. He could easily come back, but we're going to say for the sake of this, he's off. So that leaves us with a blank LAG team, Carolina with just Gwyn, and then Minnesota with just Lins, and then we're going to assume Cobra's there. So just like for those few teams, I'm assuming there's going to be more movement. Maybe Thieves move, maybe Surge move, maybe there's more moves from Ultra. Maybe there is a clear from Boston, but Brock, if we have Thieves, Seattle, the Falcons team, Optic, FaZe, Boston, and Miami essentially like staying the same, that leaves us with 5, or even New York. That leaves us with 4 teams potentially with openings, and one of them is Ultra with only one opening, and Minnesota with two. So there are a ton of players who should be in the league that are just not going to be in the league this year.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
So let's start with Ultra. You're Toronto Ultra. We're saying Insight's off the team. I still think there's a world where maybe they bring Insight back, but we're saying nope, they're done. They're getting rid of Insight. He's a free agent. He's eligible for these other teams we have. Who are you picking up? I think there's an obvious answer. I'm curious to see what you think.
To me,
I think it's a home run hit.
I have two for me. Either I do like Slasher for his experience and veteranship, as you would say, or I wouldn't mind Attach also being on this team.
I think Attach is the home run. I think you go all out for Attach, and I don't see a world where Attach doesn't sign here if he's offered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the other team that could? I guess the one team that could poach him is if like New York wanted to drop Skies.
Yeah,
that's the one team that. Otherwise, there's no way. I like Gwyn, but there's no way I'm going there. Abuza plays his role if Seattle opens up a spot. I'm not going to that Minnesota team. I'm not going to Thieves. Maybe you could make an argument if Thieves drops Nasty, but I'm still choosing Ultra over them. Mm-hmm. They're the obvious choice. If they offer him, to me, it's a home run hit because Ultra does struggle sometimes in S&D. Like, their S&D goes so up and down. Attaches a really good S&D player.
And he's very icy.
I think he can slay a little heavier than Insight. Like, I trust him more. Mm-hmm. He's extremely icy. I think he can play a little faster than Insight and speed up with Scrap and bring a little more pace. I think Attach, I actually would prefer Attach on this team even over Insight. I think Attach is a home run, and I think that this Ultra team should be going all out to pick up Attach. And, there are talks potentially they could move another one of their SMGs. And I don't hate a world where they would move on from like Envoy or something, but to me, I don't see why you would because I don't think there's an upgrade for this team at SMG that's out there.
Yeah, I think
unless you get Hydra, one of the Tiny Terrors, or Pred or shottzyy. Yep. I don't really think there's an upgrade out there for them, so I think they stick the trio. And to me, I don't even think there's another focus. I think you're the team that has the most desirable open roster spot in the league. I think you're going all out for Attach. If I'm Attach, and I believe Attach probably would sign that deal in a heartbeat to play with Scrap, Kleenex, and Envoy. Attach hasn't had a good team like that in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And he's definitely still good to be on the top 4 team.
Yeah. I'm going to say, since I think we could both agree with that, I think we're going to take Attach out for the rest of this exercise. Like, I think he has to go to Ultra if they're getting rid of Insight.
Yeah. Agreed.
Let's move on to, to Carolina. If you're Carolina, what are you doing around Gwyn? So you obviously need another SMG and then a couple ARs to pair with him. To me, I'm narrowing down my SMG pool. I'm looking at Vivid. I'm looking at Mac. I'm looking at Nero. I would say Tej, but they're obviously not going to pick up Tej. To me, I'm looking at Vivid, Mac, and Nero. And I think when it comes down to it, you're probably going to be like, Nero's my number one target. I like Mac a lot, but it's hard to pick him up when he didn't play last year. I like Vivid, but it's hard to pick him up when he took the break. To me, I'm targeting Nero for the SMG duo. Are you?
I thought they go Nero because he had such a great year.
Yeah. I think they go Nero as well. It's just a matter of, will they offer enough money? Will somebody else come in and poach him?
Mm-hmm.
Will somebody buy out that LAG spot and have a lot more money to offer? Like a space station comes in, they offer a lot more. Is Nero going to go there? So I guess maybe not. What do you think? Who would you pick up if you were the GM there for his SMG duo? Are you taking Nero still?
Yeah, I'll take Nero, definitely.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. And then, I hate to say it, Brock, we were just talking about bottom teams taking a chance. I'm picking up illey, and I'm picking up Insight.
Yep, I was going to say Insight.
Illey and Insight. I'm taking the risk. You have to obviously convince the players to play with illey, but I'm taking the risk because, once again, this is a bottom team. You're not going to win by going safe. Like, you're not going to be able to win by picking up the safe, like saying, oh, fellow, we want a consistent flex. Obviously, they're not picking up fellow. They just dropped him. But I'm going Nero, I'm going illey, and I'm going Insight. I feel like you have Gwyn, the super high upside, but also a high floor. Then you have Nero, really high upside player. Illey, you're going for all the upside with that trio, being able to slay with the top teams. Then you have Insight, veteran leadership, been in a lot of finals, been in a couple champs grand finals, just like a lot of experience there for Insight. I say you bring him in to kind of be the steady, calming voice on this team, and you go with the talent stack trio: Gwyn, Nero, illey, Insight. That's the team I'm going with from Carolina.
Yep.
I like you there.
Agreed.
All right, then Minnesota. Let's go with them next, since they have the two players. They have Cobra and Linz. We thought they'd heavily be targeting Abuza. Sounds like he's not a free agent anymore, though. I want to say I'm like So I guess SMG duo. To me, you're targeting Nero here as well.
Yep.
For the sake of the exercise, though, let's say Nero isn't an option because we said he went to Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my top target, I'm looking
Vivid?
at Tej and Vivid.
Yeah.
I like Tej in this team, but I think I want somebody more Tej is pretty aggressive, but I want Vivid back in this team because Minnesota finished top 4 in that first event when they had Vivid with him and Linz. That's when Linz looked like he was like a breakout star.
Yeah.
Was
it
when
worked.
Vivid was next to him. Yeah. I want Vivid next to him with Linz, Cobra, and then main AR.
Just put beans or something in there.
Yeah, I don't mind beans, but I feel like that could be a communication nightmare.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say Slasher.
That's a good shout.
Because I think they should have picked up Slasher last year for accuracy mid-season.
Mm.
Like Slasher, Clay, one of those guys. Give me Slasher, Clay. I'll say Slasher. Even Arcitys if you want to pick him up. I'm gonna say Slasher though. I think like this team doesn't move me crazy. Like that, you got to see a lot out of Cobra, Linz. They have to grow a lot as players. I think like a Vivid and Linz duo, and then Slasher, Cobra. Slasher can help mold Cobra. I don't know. I could see this team, making a run at champs. I don't think it's like a great team, but once again, they're picking from the scraps.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Vivid gives you a good upside and good consistency, and I think Slasher helps bring some leadership to this team with the young players. What are you going with though?
Now you said Slasher. I'm gonna stick. I'll go with beans. I'll go with just talent.
Yeah, just talent stack and pray you can make it work.
And hopefully the coach can figure out the comms and stuff.
I mean, with some of these bottom teams, I don't ever hate it. Like, this is another team I think could go for illey. Like, these bottom teams, I'm saying all of you should go for illey because, like, once again, you're the team that's worth taking a risk and, like, praying he can just play a full season for you because, like, you're going to suck anyways, most likely. So just, like, take a chance on a player with high potential.
Yep.
Then the blank team, Brock. LAG. It gets really interesting depending on, like, who potentially comes in for them. If it's a team that has a lot of money, they could really mess up this free agency and offer these top free agents a lot of money. But like, let's just say everyone's on the table. Like, I don't know, because like maybe they can like pull apart Nero or something. I think I'm going like Nero and Tej, or everybody else is off the board. I'm going like Mac and Tej. Like if Vivid and Nero are off the board from what we just made, I'm going like Mac, Tej, Beans, and I don't know. Let's say everybody's on the board. I'd probably go like Nero, Tej, Beans, and I don't even know. I mean, if illey's available again, I'm taking illey for the upside there. Man, the flex. I forgot about Geo.
Oh yeah,
I kind of forgot about Geo. I don't hate Geo as a shout. Actually, honestly, on Carolina, I'm probably going Insight, Geo, Gwyn, and Nero. Geo and Nero have a little bit of chemistry from playing together last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was looking at like a list of those players and I just saw Geo and I was like, wait, yeah, maybe I go Geo on this team. Maybe like Geo, Beans, Tej, and Nero or something. If I'm adding all the players to that blank team, the LAG squad.
Yeah. I'd probably go. Yeah, I'd go like more of the same where you're going like Slasher, Tej,
OGLA,
Nero, and like Geo or illey or Clay. You could maybe pop in there for main AR.
I honestly like a lot of people will be like, you need like a good leader for these bottom teams, and I agree. Like sometimes I don't know. Sometimes they'll argue for it, but like at the same time, I think you and I have the same philosophy for it. Like I'm not trying to build the perfect team. When I'm on the bottom teams, I'm just trying to talent stack and figure the rest out because like you're already like look at the Atlanta FaZe team, the trio and Draza. Look at that Optic team that just won champs. Look at even the Toronto New York team. Like those teams are so good as a team and they're also so talented that like if you have good teamwork but your players really aren't that good, like it's not going to matter. Like you're going to only beat them 1 out of every 20 times. Like you're going to every once in a while sneak a win out, but you're never going to be able to consistently beat them. You know how you can? If you talent stack and like you just load up your team with a ton of talent that maybe isn't like the smartest players right now, but can develop into it, get a good coach, work on your system throughout the year. Like if you're these bottom teams, just talent stack and you'll try to figure out the rest. Because I'd rather have all the talent and have to figure it out than know how to play it, but just not have the talent to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can teach people how to play and like figure that out. You just can't make them more talented. It's just not how it works.
Yeah. They just can't, if they're at their peak, they just can't get better.
Yeah, like you can teach somebody how to play the game better. You unfortunately cannot increase their talent level. Like they can practice and get better at a game, but like their natural talent's just not going to go up.
Yeah, sure, the team could be very, very smart and hold all the setups, but if they don't have the talent, they're just gonna broke every time.
Well, it's a lot of teams we've seen in the past. Like some of the teams that come to mind for me are like we just talked about them earlier, like that Gen G team in Black Ops 4. It's like they were super good as a team. They had super good teamwork. They did have a lot of talent, but it's like when it came down to it, right at the end of the tournament, they would just get talent diffed by a team. Like United, like Optic, like 100T in that game, or like the other team that always comes to mind. We always talk about them. BO3 Elevate.
Yep.
That Nagafen team, Nagafen, Facento, Fellow, and Aqua. Aqua. Shout out to Aqua for those of you that don't know him. Go watch like a BO3 montage. He was disgusting.
He dropped like 1.3 every tournament.
He was so good. He was so good. He was even good into the CDL era. He was just on bad teams.
Yep.
But shout out to Aqua. But that team, that Elevate team, it was kind of the same thing. Like if Aqua wasn't dropping a 1.5 in every respawn, they weren't going to win against the top teams. Like they were another team that they got so many second places and just were never able to get over the hump and win an event because it was the same story every time. Like they were super good as a team. They were able to beat all the teams that were on the same talent level as them because they were really good as a team. Then it came down to it. And like it didn't matter how good of a team they were when it came down to like a losers final or a winners final or a grand final. Like they just didn't have the talent to stack up to the top teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like every once in a while you might be able to win an event like that, but like for the most part, you're gonna have to just talent stack and pray you can learn the game better.
Yep. Every time you mentioned Elevate, I just remember that. What was the evac? Was it where Fellow was like triple positives? Like he was like 30-10 against the Optic. And
he was just, and it was like, I think it was like one of his first matches as a pro too. Like he was like an unknown like 18-year-old fellow at the time.
He just like I've like never seen like that against like that such a good team. Like you never see Optic.
That was like
a player on the other team going like that.
Yeah, that was like prime Optic Dynasty, and like Fellow was just using an SMG at the time, and he was just frying them.
Yeah, but then Optics do make that huge comeback still and win.
I was gonna say, didn't Optic actually end up winning the map, and they were down by like 150 or something?
It was like I swear it was like 180 to like 50, and they made a comeback.
That's what I was gonna say, like 180 to 40, 180 to 50. Then I'm pretty sure Optic came back.
Yeah, they made a huge comeback.
Yeah, yeah, that was funny. But just some classic teams like that. It's just like talent stack and figure the rest out when you're a bottom team. Obviously, when you're a top team, definitely like the answer isn't just talent stack and figure the rest out. Like that time when you have the pick of the litter over who you want, then it's like get plenty of talent, but like figure out how these roles are going to work together. Figure out all this. It's like when you're a bottom team, just get all the really talented players you can on your roster, and then just like retool it around that. But like get them all locked up so you can kind of pick and choose between the talented players.
Yeah. Yep. Both agree on that.
Yeah. You got anything else before we wrap this one up? That's about it we got for today.
No, not really. Just excited for the beta to come out, even though I probably won't be able to play that much of it.
Yeah. Same. I'm in the same boat, but I'm very excited to, play whatever I can. Also excited for next week's episode, the NFL preview. Going to be a very, very, very fun time. So I'm really, really, really excited to jump in and do that. It's usually like a lower viewed video because like obviously our listeners are more CDL people, maybe not as much NFL, especially with the European listeners are like NFL. I don't care about that. But our UK listeners, tune in. Maybe you'll enjoy the NFL. So we'll probably do that next week. Probably not much COD, obviously there's big news. We'll talk about it, but pretty much going to be an NFL episode with hopefully at least one special guest. So we'll jump in and do that next week. If you guys enjoy this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the audio platforms, drop a follow, drop a 5-star review. Yeah, NFL episode next week, and we will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.